Well, I actually was kind of goaded into it by my sister-in-law, who really had been wanting to make a film, and she wanted to get more involved in directing and editing herself. And we were working together on a job for my makeup effects studio, and she was really kind of interested by the way that several of the employees, not all of them, but a lot of them were really big Freddie fans and had Freddie tattoos and belt buckles and T-shirts and all sorts of, Freddie nuts, basically. And she thought, well, that's interesting. I didn't know this movie was so popular. And she was coming from a completely kind of outside point of view. And I said, oh, yeah, no, this movie is really popular, and people are really devoted to Freddie. And then she said, well, what about you? You were the star of that movie. And I'm like, well, but, not so much Nancy. There's not that many Nancy fans, really, in the way that they love Freddie and collect the toys and all of that. And so she was like, well, that's not right. And so from there, she kept developing this idea that it was high time to kind of put a spotlight on Nancy and use me as a way of doing that. And just by kind of having a tongue-in-cheek, question that we asked, why Freddie Mania and not Nancy Mania? And so that's where we started, and that's how we ended up taking a camera crew to the first convention, and that's the question that we would ask people.
Mm-hmm. It's funny to me with documentaries especially that you set out to make one and you have a goal in mind. As you said, that original question about why not Nancy. But in the course of making a documentary, it can become something else. What about the process surprised you the most?
Well, from the very get-go, we started meeting fans who were, really serious about their love of the movie that was a lot deeper than just kind of that typical fandom that you think about where, you just really love horror movies or being scared. That we just really sensed that there was something about this particular movie that resonated with people who, had certain kinds of lives, who had certain kinds of struggles in their life, and who really made the connection between themselves and Nancy. And they kind of aligned themselves with her kind of thinking in that survival mode and getting through this, very devastating part of their life that was trying to kill them. And I found a lot of people were literally identifying themselves with Nancy, which I thought was, very interesting and kind of hard to believe, actually, in the beginning. So we pursued that with several of the fans, and we got these really great stories about, just how hard life is for a teenager, especially, some teenagers just have really pretty tough lives to deal with, and over all ranges of things, and I realized that I started getting really empathetic with the kinds of stories that they were telling me, because I just felt like, wow, this is their way of coping. This is the way they coped and the way they got through this part of their life that they, didn't really enjoy very much. And it was kind of a theme that I kept hearing over and over again, is that, there was a lot going on in kids' lives that they were trying to kind of escape from, avoid, and surmount. And I'll just add one more thing, is that we really tried to avoid that really over-serious tone. So we tried to cut it up and use the editing and the music and a lot of the funny things that we see on the convention floor to kind of just slice through a lot of that more, serious part and try to match them side by side.
But that was the first time that you were made aware of kind of the depth of the influence of your character.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had inklings of it from going to conventions for 20 years now, but it just seems more and more that I'm seeing more of that and amongst the fans and this willingness to kind of tell me these kinds of stories.
How did you go about defining that character for yourself?
Well, I mean, it was really clear that she was going to have to be this really sensible, ingenious kind of fighter, and it wasn't something that I set about doing with a lot of kind of that actor method preparation. I just really felt like if I played each moment as realistically as possible in this very fantastic setting, that alone was going to set her apart as being able to kind of keep control of herself and be this kind of very special teenage girl. It didn't have to take much. It didn't really take much at all to just be as understated as possible.
Well, what strikes me about it is that, I mean, the film, the people behind the film were very passionate, an accomplished group of people behind the movie, but it was a lower budget affair. No one could have expected it to become the phenomenon that it did. Tell me about the atmosphere on the set. And you guys were young. Did it have this kind of air of innocence about it, or?
There was just it's hard to put a word on it. It was a workaday environment. I mean, there wasn't, with this extra ingredient of making horror movies, which involves kind of it's like a magician with a big toolbox there who is going to pull out certain things in hopes that they work. I mean, nothing was proven or had been tried before, so every time we tried something, we knew it could have succeeded or failed. And everyone was really patient, and if it hadn't worked, they would have somehow made do anyway. There were no expectations that it had to be great or that we had to do anything special. In fact, since there were no expectations, I think it gave everyone a lot of it was just much more relaxed. I can imagine if there were tons of expectations, everyone would have been a lot more nervous about the way they were performing and what they were going to bring to the set each day. But, Wes was very calm, and everyone was really quiet. We had, pretty, long hours, and everyone was working hard. But like I said, there was a feeling of like going to work every day and just getting that work done. And as a result, I think people just were very real. I mean, everybody was kind of real to who they were.
And when were you first aware that it had become a phenomenon?
Well, I think like the first time I heard there were horror movie conventions, I think is when I was like, really? It was probably about 4 or 5 years later. And even after Nightmare 3, it wasn't that popular in my circle. I mean, nobody really ever talked about it. So to me, it was kind of the sleeping giant. And then as I started being invited to more of these events and I saw the actual fans who were, spending their hard-earned money to go, I was like, wow, this is much more of a culture than I ever thought it was. And, then all of the internet gets invented, and then all of these sites and all these radio programs, and so many people are, kind of making a second living off of this, this world of horror. And, it's pretty fascinating.
You talk about it being a culture unto itself, and I find that horror movie fans are among the most loyal you'll find on the planet. And you've attended conventions and met with fans over the years. Tell me about that interaction in general. What do you get from them?
Yeah, the loyalty is just, you can't even really explain it to somebody. You have to have them come with you and really see it for themselves. But I guess it stems from, when you first see a horror movie and you're young, it does so much, it sends you to this new kind of planet of experience of being afraid and frightened and screaming and the thrill and all of that. I think that it also forms a deep bond with people to really love it. If they love that experience, then they end up loving it forever. If they hated that experience, then, they don't later become fans. I think it's something that really, you're either you love it or you don't. And it kind of, you can split the world down the middle. I have yet to find a friend who didn't like horror who I've convinced to like it. It's almost it's something that you passionately believe in, or that you just passionately avoid.
Well,
and that's kind of how the fans are.
Right, and it taps in. Nightmare on Elm Street taps in on something so universal, and those are the horror movies that I find that really last. I mean, we all sleep, we all dream. It's like the shower in Psycho and the shark in Jaws. I mean, it's a kind of inescapable. It's part of our everyday life, so it taps into that. I would imagine that fans are rabid for your movie. Have you had screenings of it? I know it's available on DVD through Amazon and at imnancy.net. Have you screened it for fans as well?
I've screened it at several cities. I've Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles, some of the bigger cities. I'm going to Denver next month. So I do screenings, but mainly, and I go to these conventions where I usually screen it. But most of the people who want to see it buy it either on Amazon or from my website. And it's been on sale since May, and it's doing really well. I mean, I'm really amazed at how many people are interested in seeing it. But getting the word out, it's tough. It's every day someone says, I had no idea that you had put this out yet. So I realize that my work is actually still to be done, and letting everybody know that it's out.
Would you mind it if I just asked you a couple of listener questions? They were so excited that you were coming on the show.
Sure.
Lucas wanted to know, he saw the film. He wanted to know, was Heather suggesting that there will be another Nightmare project with Wes at the end of I Am Nancy?
Oh, that's funny. I don't think so, but I do think that Wes gave me such a great interview, and it's almost worth the whole movie itself, is some of the things that he tells us about his inspiration for writing Nightmare on Elm Street. But I don't think so. I think Wes is pretty much done with Nightmare on Elm Street. Unfortunately, I mean, wouldn't it be great if he was able to somehow come back? But, he has a career that I think I don't know if it's a priority for him to go back and revisit that whole world. And now that Warner Brothers is kind of doing it in their own way, I don't know if there would be a place for him. But I do think that he was very sincere when he said those nice things about me. I mean, I really feel so flattered in the comments that he made.
And what sets him apart, in your view, among the directors that you've worked with?
Well, I mean, he's so committed to his art form, which it's genre films and horror movies, in a way that very few filmmakers get an opportunity to be committed. I mean, a lot of, a director who wants to just do comedy, works on it their whole career and tries to perfect it and tries to find, new things in it all the time and please his audience. And Wes is very much like that. I think he is always trying to discover more for himself and for his audience, like what is fear, what does scare people, what are the stories that we could, gather around the campfire and listen to and be scared by. And, some people are like, oh, this one wasn't scary or this one wasn't a success financially. But, in our movie making world, there's a million reasons why a movie cannot be financially successful, and it's not necessarily that the movie's no good. I mean, and I would certainly say that about Nightmare 7, which is probably my favorite. I think that movie's excellent, and we won the Toronto Film Festival, and we got a lot of praise for that movie. But in general, it was kind of, it wasn't a financially successful film. So, he's always looking after his passion, which is horror, and I think he's going to be remembered as somebody who, really was committed to that whole genre and built it into something that now is, considered extremely mainstream.
Yeah, but you talked about there being no expectations with the first one, so it had kind of a workaday atmosphere. But by the time you get to New Nightmare, obviously the series has become the phenomenon. Did it feel different? Was it a different atmosphere?
It was a much different atmosphere, and I do think that there was a lot more kind of pressure to provide something that people wanted to see, or, there was an expectation that, that Freddy had to be a certain amount of scariness, and Nancy had to have this particular kind of strength, and they had to battle in a way that had, been preordained kind of by the previous movies that we had done. So there was a lot of talking about how we had done it in the past, and how are we going to meet now? We did it this way back then, and what parallels can we draw to the first? How can we make them really cool for the audience to enjoy? And it's like when I'm sitting there with my kid and he's watching Nightmare on Elm Street, like those kinds of things. These so informed the script. They also informed how we were performing as well, I think. I mean, maybe Robert would disagree with me, but I think that I was always thinking about Nancy number one, but when I was being Nancy in that movie.
Right. Last question. Elizabeth, she wants you to know that she loves you, first of all. And
Thank you.
She wants to know, she says, I always wondered what Heather thought of working with both Johnny Depp and Patricia Arquette at the beginning of their careers. Did she have a sense of their special, unique kind of talents and where they were going to go with their careers?
Well, I have to say, so many of the actors that were in those movies were, just as talented. I mean, I look at Larry Fishburne and, Nan Martin and all the people that I've had the privilege, Amanda Wes, and they were all so good at what they do. And, whether somebody becomes a superstar or not, so many people who are such fine actors, the ones that become superstars, you're like, yeah, it was evident there, but it's evident in so many people that you work with. Why it happens to certain people and not others it's something that's so mysterious, and it's probably like the most alluring part of the entertainment business is trying to figure that out. And but certainly, I mean, both Johnny and Patricia, they're pretty magical people in and of themselves. I mean, just if you met them on the street, they're really super unique.
Well, this series has been in your life for so many years now. With I Am Nancy, do you feel like you've kind of come full circle and closed a chapter on it in a way?
I totally do. I feel like what I really wanted to do is I wanted to kind of put a big bow on this whole 25 years and say how great it was for me and what an honor it was for me to be part of that whole thing and do my part to memorialize this character that Wes Craven created. And I wanted to, kind of shout out to the world that Wes was such a genius, and Robert Englund is such a genius too. And so I really feel like I accomplished it with I Am Nancy. I did everything I set out to do and actually a little bit more. I hope I tell a story that inspires people in and of themselves, just who, watch the movie and might feel better about some of the trials and bad stuff that they have to live through every day. So there's this kind of inspirational message that I was able to fit in as well. So, I mean, I kind of was amazed when I saw the final product and was able to really step back and appreciate it, that I did accomplish what I wanted, and I don't have to be worried that, Nancy's going to be forgotten, or that the whole Nightmare on Elm Street phenomenon, I wasn't able to make a comment about it. Because, often people who participate in these big phenomenons, you never really hear what they think about it. You don't really know what Harrison Ford thinks about the whole Star Wars thing, even though he's such an important part of it. But I'm sure he has some pretty cool opinions about why it was such an important film, and I'm interested in that. The actors are a really integral part of movies, and so I felt whether people agree or not. But I just really felt that there was something that I could add to the conversation that hadn't already been said.
Well, there's obviously a lot of love out there for Nightmare on Elm Street, and a lot of love out there for you. I mean, I've been bombarded with emails once we announced that you were going to be on the show. So we all love you, and thank you so much for making I Am Nancy. I mean, it's a big treat for any fan of this series and of you. And
well, thank you. Yeah, IamNancy.net. You can get it there, and I'll autograph it. And then you can come to a convention where I usually have them on my table, or, you can go to Amazon.com.
So tell me what upcoming conventions where people can see you in person.
Okay, I'm going to be in Denver on September 26th, and then I'll be in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, the first week in October. And then I'm going to, and then Rock and Shock in Massachusetts on the 7th and 8th of September, I believe. Or, no, the 15th and 16th of September at Rock and Shock, Massachusetts. That's in Worcester. And then, that's what the schedule is now. And at IamNancy.net, I usually put up all my engagements so people can follow where I'll be from there.